Welcome to Beyond Just Business, the podcast for those who want more. More clarity, more direction, and potentially more meaning. We explore the thinking behind success, the habits that shape performance, and the questions that go deeper than profit margins. If you're ready to challenge the obvious and rethink the way life and business work, you are absolutely in the right place. Now, welcome back to Season 2 of Beyond Just Business, Episode 3. Can you believe they still let us in the airwaves? I can't believe we said what we said in the last episode and we haven't been cancelled yet. There's a lot to be said for that. Welcome back, Paul. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Same as last two sessions, yeah.
Notice, listeners, that he said he's good, he's not great. I got to read into that. I think he's unhappy in his life and he's going to have to go back to accountancy because that's the job he actually loves. That's a trick question for anyone who actually was listening to the last ones. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of having a particular topic that we're going to open out and talk about, we're going to use a variety of different words. And I'm going to throw a word at Paul. I'm going to see where it goes, but we're going to keep the answers relatively short. And we're going to see if any of they then spark another conversation or thought process for those listening. And equally for anyone who is listening to this, if there's a topic you'd like to have covered, or if there's a subject that you feel you'd like to give more airtime to, don't be afraid to touch base with myself or Paul via the podcast or on our website, Beyond Just Business. And you're more than welcome to send us a question, a concern, a query, and everything's in confidence. But if you have any ideas that you want to send us that you want discussed, feel free to let us know. So today, words to spark a conversation. So the first one that comes up, and I'm not going to choose them in order, so I'm really going to mess with your head today,
Okay.
is ladders. So what comes to mind?
I don't have one long enough, which I don't. I'm trying to clean a skylight window and I can't reach it. So yeah, I don't have one long enough. Ladders, what? I suppose there's the old adage of what people refer to as if you're going to climb a ladder, make sure it's against the right wall.
I like
That's
that one.
that's one aspect. Ladders for me just don't, apart from my DIY work. But yeah, if I was to really tap into it, I don't like ladders. That's been
Ooh.
honest.
Say more, go on.
Ladders for me implies that you're going to take one step after the next step after the next step to progress to a particular position. Because the whole analogy of a ladder is that you put it against the wall, you climb the ladder and you get to where you want to get to. I just don't really enjoy that concept. I don't buy into it. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. I'd rather just live a life and see how it unfolds, as opposed to, and don't get me wrong, I was there, as I explained in our previous episodes that we recorded. I was that soldier to say, okay, so yeah, where's the career I want to pursue? All that kind of things. But the driving force behind that was money. I wanted to make money. I wanted to grow money. That was the driving force behind that. I had a family that I wanted to provide for and so on. And I wanted to have the experiences that I want to experience. But again, if you drill down even deeper into that, I wanted experience. Simple as that. So now the driving force for me is with that clarity of I just want my life to evolve or to unfold from the perspective of experiencing. I can take experiences in all different aspects. I could go to a cafe and really enjoy the experience. It's as simple as that. Or I could strap myself to the top of a biplane, do aerobatics in the air, and that's a different type of experience.
Who'd do
Um,
that? No one would do that. No one would be mad enough to do that, would they?
so it's, yeah, so I repel or rebel against the concept of ladder. Is that wrong?
No, I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. I think the
Hmm.
reality of it is that's an immediate thing that hits you because you think corporate ladder, also by virtue of you've done it. So when you think about how you've done it, it'll either resonate with you or it'll repel you. And I think when you go with your gut, and again with all these conversations, there's nothing right or wrong. I
Yeah,
judge you off camera, but that's in the privacy of
that's
my own
okay.
home.
Yeah.
You should hear the things I say about you when I talk to myself. It's unreal. The
Don't worry,
second,
Jen tells me anyway.
I knew it. She's a turncoat. So the next one is trade-offs because I think that's an
Hey,
interesting
you didn't
jumping
answer
off
that
point.
one. What's
Uh,
letters mean to you? You're not getting away with
Says
that
I'm
one.
answering. No, I would agree. I think that what's interesting is that you said it. You actually covered it very well. Where you said putting it against, or make sure you put it against the right wall. I think the concept of a ladder is that you get to a certain spot and you're able to change the bulb, and that bulb is your guaranteed X, Y, Z, whatever it may be. I think for me, I look at it more as a path that a path is sometimes it's straight, sometimes it's bumpy, sometimes there is no path and you have to make your own. Whereas a ladder is quite prescriptive. And I immediately jump to climbing the corporate ladder. That was something I never did, was never able to do. It would have really just when I think about it, I immediately, my daughter wanted to borrow a tie last week for doing dress up, and like I had to look for one for quite a period, quite a long time because I used to have about 50 of them, and now I've got about six. I have a funeral tie and a party tie and a couple of ones in between. But that kind of speaks to my corporate ladder type of
Yeah,
thinking. So be similar to yourself, and I think
yeah.
it's not for everybody, but it's interesting that we both interpret it that way. So on to the next one then. So when we look at ladder, corporate, everything else, trade-offs. So everyone's yes to work or whatever it may be is a no to something else. Do you even know what you're trading away?
I think it depends on how you look at it. What immediately comes to mind for trade-off is that it means that you're sacrificing something. But to me, I'm pulled back to fair exchange. So there's always going to be something that you're going to give, but there's a fair exchange for what you're going to receive in return. So that's different to me. The trade-off to me just implies that you're still going to be results in an end deficit. That's what it implies. Now, it may not mean that, but to me, that's it implies that I'm going to be worse off as a result. Whereas I prefer to operate from a point of fair exchange. So whatever I'm going to give, I'm going to get something back in return. And it doesn't necessarily have to be money, it could be anything. But I think again, if I go back to the other law with the law of duality, there's always pain and pleasure. So there's the work that one does, there's still an element of work that's involved as in work, which is the pain, but the reward is the pleasure of making maybe seeing the difference of the client, the impact it's making for them, or the financial reward that you're going to get, or something to do with your reputation. Or there's always both sides, like always both sides. So in that respect, it's not really a trade-off. That's what sparks the mind straight away.
What's interesting though is you'd have that mindset, and I would immediately go to the societal version of I'm trading off time, so I'm spending time on work. Ergo, my children, my health, my personal time,
Mm.
whatever it may be, has been traded off as a result. Whereas that reframe has actually stopped me in my tracks and got me thinking, yes, I'm doing this, but that's going to happen then on the other side.
Mm.
It's actually interesting. I immediately would have gravitated towards, well, it's a trade-off. I have to go to a meeting tonight, therefore my trade-off is I can't put my daughter to bed, let's say.
Yeah,
Whereas what I'm actually doing is I'm doing something that then enables me to potentially do something else, 5 or 10x, in place of that by virtue of doing it.
yeah, yeah.
That's also maybe an internal justification as well, though. You can say to yourself, I'm doing it because you can justify a night out with the lads on the lash because you're connecting,
Yeah,
bonding.
agreed. Yeah, but I think when it comes to fair exchange, if you take those two laws together, the law of fair exchange and law of duality, so there's always both sides. Therefore, there has to be pain and pleasure in every single situation, and there's fair exchange. So if you're doing something, yeah, there will be work involved, but you're going to get something in return. So, for example, if I have a meeting in the evening time, yes, it's biting into my evening time. Whatever I want to do, whether spend time with the family or go for a walk or whatever activity that I might have, that but on the other side, I'm still getting something in return. I'm either having an amazing conversation with somebody because it's a meeting with somebody. Yeah, perhaps you might get the financial return, but I'd never focus on the money. So it's never about that for me. It's more around, okay, there might be something unlocked within them that I'm walking away with and saying, oh my God, that was absolutely amazing. So so I'm putting the time in, I'm putting the work in, but I'm seeing or experiencing or witnessing the reward in return. So it's not a for me, I don't see it as a way of excusing having to work in the evening time. Because when it comes down to it, you've got a choice in regards to everything that you do. And so you choose if I want to have a meeting in the evening time, I'll choose to have a meeting in the evening. Other evenings I won't. Yeah, I just for me it's different.
It's an interesting reframe though, because, and it's funny, being in sales in any shape or form, I remember that if I was opening the door to someone years ago, and it could be one of these classic, you're trying to sell something, and like with sales people, any salesperson, is nothing a sale won't cure. But when I used to think of my trade-off is that if someone wanted to view a property at 8 o'clock at night, back when I was selling property, you could open the door one time at 8 o'clock at night and you wonder why you've wasted your life with this menial position of opening this door to someone and they're just a waste of time and I
Mm.
could be doing X, Y, Z. or you can meet someone that potentially changes your life. And I've done that a couple of times. I've met fascinating people because they were traveling, whatever it may have been.
Yeah.
And my perception of the trade-off was vastly different after the trade-off,
Yeah.
where I said, wow, imagine if I hadn't done this. Imagine if I hadn't opened that door. And I think equally because I do my own thing, I suppose what's ironic is I'm keenly aware that the trade-off is I could be going for a walk at 9 o'clock or half 9 in the morning when I'm workplace would generally perceive me as having to be in the office. And then the other side of it is no one's going to see me at half 10 at night when I'm on the phone to someone in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But the other side of leaning into that inverted comma, the reframe with the trade-off is what are other people going to think of that trade-off?
Yeah.
So that there's that
Yeah.
interplay with what other people think you should be doing. And then, like you said, it's making that choice as well, which is, and I've learned a lot from that, which is I'm going to have a great conversation. I'm going to really connect. Someone's going to be very interested to see where this goes, as opposed to I'm not going to do it because it's maybe uncomfortable. Maybe it's at a time I'm in normal terms and we're not used to,
Yeah.
but maybe because we do our own thing, you have to be open to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reframe. So reframe is probably the key word there with that trade-off. It's not that you're losing something, it's that you're exchanging something.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Because it is an exchange. Because when you look for it, you'll see that exchange happening and you'll see the fact that there's always both sides. So trade-off just implies to me that you're going to be worse off by doing that particular activity. It's just what it means to me. That's all.
No, it's completely wrong, Paul. You've got the answer
I
wrong.
know.
You're
I
not
know.
getting the car or the holiday to Istanbul as we promised. Are there any of those quiz shows still available, by the way, anymore? They offer you like a Toyota Corolla, 10 grand shopping spree, or a trip to wherever. I
No,
think
no, I'm still thinking the generation game whereby you have to name all the things like the teddy bear and the washing machine and
oh,
God knows
listen,
what was on
where
the
it goes
conveyor
along the
belt.
conveyor belt.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, then there's other ones that just, it was actually someone else mentioned Mr. Blobby, your man Noel Edmonds' house. Like when you think of
oh
these
yeah,
things that are so random, and I just think it's
yeah.
completely ridiculous.
The one I'm enjoying at the moment is the 1% game. If you've come across that one.
No, what's that?
Yeah, so the 1% game is there's a whole lot of people in the audience and you ask a question and if you get the answer wrong, then you're out. But it all aims towards it's based on 1% of the population will know the answer to this particular question. So you're getting to the 1% question. But yeah, I've never managed to actually get to the 1% question, but it's a really enjoyable game show or quiz show or whatever you want to call it to test your knowledge on, let's put it that way.
And is it on Netflix or normal TV or
No,
what is
it's
it?
just normal TV. Yeah, yeah. I can't remember what station's on there, but yeah, it's just all normal. It's probably on Virgin, but it's the questions are really clever, and then
Yeah.
some of them are cryptic in terms of you can't really you got to look at it from a completely different angle in order to actually come up with the answer to the question.
Oh, so it's
Uh,
not like a general knowledge who wants to
no,
do
no, no, no,
Supermillionaire or whatever the
no,
word is.
no. What was that other one? The one which was general knowledge. I was used to Travago or not Travago. That's a holiday
Trivial,
site.
Trivial Pursuit.
Trivial Pursuit. Yeah, I was useless at that thing.
Tobacco.
See, we're advertising companies already again.
I know. This is funny, actually. In the property business or the property industry, there's also a certification from a company or an accrediting body called Tagova. And I remember someone used to say every year, I'm going to get my Travago cert. And I thought, I didn't know he moonlighted as an estate agent
Oh
or as
God.
a travel agent. So on to the next one. So we've talked about ladders, we've talked about the trade-off. So if we're thinking about the trade-off, what role, when you think of absence, what comes to mind?
Being away from family.
In
Um,
what way?
so go back to not being present. So when I look back on when I was running 60 retail stores, there were times I received conversation or received telephone calls from, and it could be in the middle of the night, but I remember one distinctly. I was in a Chinese restaurant with my family, got a call, ended up not having to. I chose to take the call at the time, left the restaurant to take the call outside, and I was gone for at least a half an hour from that restaurant meal. And then I came back in, and obviously my family had finished their meal. That was subsequent. That was a wake up call, and sense of holy crap, I'm prioritizing a phone call because yeah, it was to do with the business I was running, but I was sacrificing that for a meal with my family. And it's not that we were going to a Chinese restaurant every single day or every single week. So going to a restaurant was a treat, for want of a better word, if you want to call it that way. There might be another word better to use for it. But it wasn't an everyday experience that you could encounter. It was a kind of, it was a family gathering for my own family. So absence to me is, yeah, when you're there, but you're not there. You're not present. You're there in body, but you're definitely not there in mind. You're not there in soul or spirit. You're just a facsimile.
I tell you what, that wallops me. It genuinely does. So that present but not present, or here but not here type of thing. I definitely feel that. And I think there's also a fallacy of, I think in my mind, I have this justification that if I have my phone in my hand and I'm answering an email very quickly, or someone rings me and I'm available to them, that when I get this particular level of XYZ, success, wealth, money, security, I'll then be able to leave the phone down and do it for someone else. But I think I have to reconcile what is it why am I picking up the phone? And I'm amongst the most important people in the world. If the sirens go off for the end of the world, I'm not going to be grabbing my clients and throw them on my back to carry them over to a ferry or to high ground. I'm going to be grabbing my kids and my wife. Although I might get Jen to throw me on her shoulders instead of me on her. But that for me, and I'm at that stage of life. Like my daughter now, the way we none of us ever seem to throw phones out.
Yeah,
People, there was
yeah,
somebody came by the house and they did this thing for the government of, oh, do you recycle your phone or do you keep it? And I was like, oh no, I recycle it, and I don't. I keep them in a box so no one else could get them. But what's not funny is my daughter came across a very old iPhone and she pretends to be on it just before she goes to bed. And she's having imaginary conversations, and there's an imagination piece. But
mm,
I'm mindful that like even putting them to bed, the phone gets put outside on the table on silent, but every ounce of my being wants to get back onto it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and then I beat myself up because I'm not lying there with them. I'm not, when they fall asleep, I'm not lying there. Okay, I consider myself very grateful that I get to do that. And
Mm.
when they do are asleep, I'm grateful that they're safe and everything else. But I also know that there's a magnetic pull. How does someone
But
change that?
but part of that I think is down to how the phone is purposely made to want it to be an addiction.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are addicted to their phones.
Oh, yeah.
So some people may be addiction to cigarettes or vaping nowadays. Some people are addicted to a lot of different other things, but the phone is one of them. And the apps on the phones are created in such a way to make the person addicted. So a lot of it is actually reprogramming our brains not to be addicted to the phone. And what you'll often find is you go to a restaurant or you go to a coffee shop or even you'll observe and everybody's on their phones, not even talking. So that for me is horrible to see because there's no human connection then. And it's funny, you might get somebody texting from one side of the table to the other side of the table, and yet the person sitting opposite them. So and don't get me wrong, I was there, I was that soldier, but it's not, and I suppose it's always a bit like the recovering smoker, whereby you then see the detriment of what you did, and then you become the reformed smoker, whereby you're saying it to everybody else. I can't just think of the right words right now at the moment, but it's in some respects, yeah, it is about breaking the addiction to the phone. For me, what I did for a lot of the time, I deleted an awful lot of apps off my phone because I was just scrolling them, and you could waste hours upon hours on a phone and before you know it, you've literally just spent 2, 3 hours doom scrolling or looking at YouTube shorts or whatever heck it might be. That time could have been better spent.
But if I was to counter that by saying we also live in a world that, like, when I think of the 90s, that someone rings the house and my phone number used to be 288 3894. That's the only number I pretty much knew. And my mum's was 2950538. So when someone wants to call you, you called, you left a voice message. And whether you were just asking how everyone was or whether you're telling them your
Mm.
house is on fire, they got to the message when they got to the message. That was it.
Yeah,
And I think the challenge now with phones, and also as a business owner, I also look at this and I'm keenly aware that someone rings me, texts me, WhatsApps me, whatever, that that could be my next client. That could be someone that needs my help. That could be someone that my reactivity is my gold signal to someone that
yeah.
they
To
need to
me, it's
work with
not.
me because of X, Y, Z and all
Yeah,
that. Which is the ironic thing because then it's a case that, oh, I tried to ring you and you didn't answer, you mustn't be hungry. So there is that hustle element that comes into it.
yeah. No,
But
not for me. And
yeah,
don't get me wrong, I was there for you are in terms of, yeah, my belief was that I had to respond to a call as quickly as possible. But no, I changed the belief from that perspective. Because let me put it this way, if you're in a meeting with a client, you can't answer the phone.
mm,
So therefore you could be gone for an hour because you're in a client meeting. So that's an hour delayed response. So what differs there compared to you waiting at the phone, waiting for somebody to ring and in the hope that you can respond immediately?
yeah. And I think it's probably for me at the stage of life, like my kids, like I still have fond memories. I have very visual memories of my dad. And like kids don't listen to what you say, they watch what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's that bit for me where it's ironic. I used to have a BlackBerry before, like where there was the two camps of BlackBerry and iPhone. And when I think of BlackBerry now, it was a simpler one because it was literally you had access to an
Mm.
email. You couldn't really do anything else.
Yeah.
But then I think the more modern version of it is you have everything always on. You have everything, you have the world at your fingertips. If it's movies, if it's money, if it's entertainment activity, you can technically travel pretty much. All these things you can do. But then the difficulty is trying to understand how to regulate it. And let me put it this way. If you were to give someone three things that they could do to maybe reimagine that bit, what would you say to them? Taking
I,
into account, you're probably speaking to a mixture of people, business owners, corporate, those who have two phones, the famous two
yeah,
phones,
yeah,
one work
yeah,
and one personal.
yeah.
But been there.
Yeah, and as far as that does make it easier because now they can put down the business phone, but some of them
Mm,
don't. They still carry around the two phones. For me, where I started off is I started removing apps that were taking up a huge amount of time, but weren't really having much value.
okay.
And that for me might be so I've Audible on my phone. So if I'm doing anything, and I normally carry around a pair of earphones. So if I want to be doing an activity that I don't really want to be watching TV or I want to sit out in the back garden, but I don't, I'm under the shelter. It's raining, so I don't really want to be listening to it in some respects. I'll plug in my earphones and I'll listen to an audiobook, but I'm not doom scrolling. So it's been a better use of the app. So one of the things is actually removing an awful lot of the apps. I'm not on social media. The only social media I am, but I don't consider social media is LinkedIn. So it's the only thing that I'm on. Everything to do with habit forming is what can you put in place in order to make it more difficult for you to do, and what can you put in place to make it rewarding. And that's just a simple way of looking at things. So how can you make it more difficult for you to be on your phone? In some respects, yeah, some people leave it in the dressing room as opposed to being beside them in the bed, or they might leave it in the office as opposed to walking around all day with it, as in when wrap meals or whatever it might be and so on. So where can you just make it a little bit more difficult? But then also you got to be rewarded because you need that dopamine hit. If you don't get the dopamine hit, the brain won't reprogram. So what's the reward for if you were to leave the phone away without responding to it? What's the reward that you're going to give it? And that might be just as simple as I might have a cup of tea, or I might have a small little packet of Haribo jellies. It's whatever it might be. It can be just something that's simple, but something that you actually enjoy. And now you're getting the reward for want of a better word, the penalty. We spoke earlier on about trade-offs. You're getting the reward for something that you've done. So number one, removing the apps. Number two is the habit of the physical phone. The reframe, which really kicks to me, which is number three, because you view what you've just said is that you got to respond immediately, but you don't. That's a belief. So it's about changing the belief. And even if you think of if I'm in a meeting, and sometimes my meetings are for half a day. So if I'm in a meeting for a half a day with clients, I'm not going to be responding until either that evening or the next day. But what I always tell my clients is, look at it, if you can't get me, I'll always respond to every single voicemail or message or email, always, every single one of them. But if I can't respond immediately, I'm either in a meeting or whatever it might be and so on, but I always respond within 24 hours. So I'm setting up the rules of engagement in effect with my clients. So they know, look, if they're not getting an answer straight away, they know I'm in a meeting or they
Mm,
know I'm tied up with something. I'm zoned out for working on a particular project or whatever it might be and so on. So I can't take the call, I can't respond. So it's the rules of engagement, but also changing the belief around that you feel you have to respond. You don't, you can choose to. And again, it's about design the life that you want to have.
It's funny how that's such a simple one when you think of it, because obviously when you have a phone, the concept of it is, no, it's here, it's a tool, and it's whatever else. But I went for a walk first thing this morning before the day began, and there was a guy in front of me walking his dog, and I'd say he was in his mid 70s, and his head was down the entire time. He had a dog that was dying to be walked, and he was watching a video as I passed. He took about two steps, and then the phone would have dragged him in again. And I suppose one of the comforts that I take from that is that no one's immune to it. It's not that it's something that teenagers and everyone beneath a certain age, is that it's designed with the human brain in mind.
Yeah,
And I think it is also one of those things where it's now a modern phenomenon almost, where I've met people that are looking at the role in technology and they're seeing it go back. So there's people who have Bluetooth, the old school dial-up phones, that there's
yeah,
Bluetooth versions of that. Like
yeah,
someone who's in AI has created a drop shipping thing or a thing with phones where your phone plugs in, but then it actually does it in such a way where you have a landline. So it stops you going near
right.
the iPhone.
Yeah.
So it's ironic that it's gone back to when dial-up was awkward and annoying and one, two. As
People, whole
my
generation that don't
grandmother.
even know what that means.
Oh, and if they don't know what you look it up, kids, look it up because that was painful. If you mixed it up at the last word at the last number, you had to start again. But what's interesting is how it's an amazing tool in lots of ways, but how it can also pull you in. And I think, like you said, so my takeaway from this conversation, I'm going to be quite selfish, and it is actually that bit of the world isn't going to implode, and the person who's willing to wait. And again, if I think of my business in property before was you could have someone that asks you today at 1 o'clock, can you come out tonight at 8 o'clock? And let's say 90% of other businesses, you're pretty much busy, booked up, or already made plans. And if you say no, how about tomorrow? They could ring you in the morning and go, oh, actually, someone came out to me last night and we've gone with them. And there's times when you think, if I'd gone out there and done the deal, maybe I would have gotten the business. But then I think if that person wasn't going to wait for me, they weren't my client anyway. So
Exactly that.
that's that's that secondary bit that you
Yeah,
have to lean into.
yeah.
So we'll take away from that when it comes to the phone. So you want to replace it, but we'd also encourage people, do not replace your phone with a cigarette. So don't become a smoker who doesn't use their phone. Treat yourself to Haribo, get diabetes instead. It's way better. Sweets taste nicer as well. So we'll get on to our last word here, and I'm just going to go and see what really, let me have a look. So let's look at the role of hunger. The note that's here is not just for food, but for validation, success, and belonging. So when I say hunger, what does that mean to you? Because obviously you're going to meet people who are at the pinnacle of the career and they either love it or they hate it. There's something missing in what they do and they can't verbalize it. So when you think of hunger, what do you think that is?
I've a different view of that because you've got to be hungry.
Oof.
And I learned that from Les Brown, which is an amazing speaker. And he has a whole talk around you got to be hungry. And and I absolutely correlate that to life in terms of if there's something you want, you've got to be hungry for it. If you're not hungry, you're just a passenger. And people will see this in terms of if there's something that you really want, you'll be hungry to go after to get it.
Yeah.
So if there's an experience that I want to experience, like strap myself to the top of a biplane, I'm hungry to experience that experience. So I literally will go out after to do it. But if there's some aspects that I'm not hungry for it, it's not going to happen. So how I'm correlating this, when it comes to goals or objectives or intentions or whatever it is that you want in life or in business, if you're not hungry for it, and if you review the list of goals that you have, I don't use goals as a term, I use intentions. So if you look at the list of intentions that you have for the quarter, the month, or the year, what are the ones that you're not actually achieving? And what you pretty much get down to is that you're not hungry enough for it. So now you can play with it if you really want to get it. So whether it be to do with financial or whether it be to do with health or whether it be to do with relationship or any particular aspect within business itself, if you're hungry enough for it, you'll get it. So you got to build that hunger. And as Les Brown would say, you've got to be hungry. That's what hunger means to me.
And what's funny, there's a lesson that I've learned because I think I would have had this perception that if you came across as hungry, it's almost the idea of, "Oh, will they ever just, would Jesus, talk about needy or talk about whatever, whatever." But that reframe for me, and that's happened to me in the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, where I would have conversations with you about my challenges, about what I would trying to be bringing something together or whatever I'm trying to do. And I think what I find so funny about it is that let's say if someone says, just pick up the phone and ask the person or push them. And I don't mean push as in
Mm.
you're cajoling someone or you're beating them into submission where they then decide, "Oh, you've beaten me, I'm going to go with it."
Yeah.
But how many people out there either approach an idea with someone, put something to someone, and then they hear crickets and they kind
Yeah.
of go, oh, that's it now. They're not interested. They hate me. They don't want to go ahead, whatever else. As opposed to, no, let's reframe this. That person has a lot going on in their own life. So when
Hmm.
you think of hunger and pushing things, no one is going to hold or push your agenda more than you. So if you're not the one who's hungry to do, the world will just continue ticking on and you'll become a footnote.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is, and that reframe for me is it's so recent, which was just prompt the person. And I know then I definitely now have an internal mechanism where I'm prompting someone and I'm prompting them from a place where I'm saying, I've already mentioned this before and I know that, but I know life is a way of taking over,
Yeah.
but I'm going to push this to the top of your inbox again. And all that happens is you're reframing that from a case of it'll either bring it to a head and someone says no. You will prompt them, they'll apologize and say, thanks a minute for reminding me I actually had a crazy week or XYZ. But at the baseline of all of that, the reframe of hunger is not being a dirty word. It's not. And I think the other thing is everyone has that internal hunger where you could use Mother Teresa and her internal hunger was to help people to make a
Mm.
change, to relieve pain, whatever it may be. That's still the exact same version in terms of someone's internal
Yeah.
mechanism and
It
someone
is. Yeah.
who's selling a course. It's the
Yeah.
same concept.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you immediately drew that back down to that hunger. Like it's a classic phrase, hunger is the best sauce. But hunger makes you think differently. It gets your brain to fire on all cylinders. It gets you looking at the role of activity in a different way. So instead of going through the motions, and I equate it to like my work rate, especially. I think there's a part of me, especially as a business owner, that sometimes thinks you have to come across a certain way. Now, authenticity, it's not that you're working out of a phone booth and you pretend you're a Fortune 500 company. I don't mean it that way. I sometimes mean those, oh, like a very well established business would do this, they do that. And then you say, yeah, but the reason I do what I do is because I'm not that. It was that reframe of no, it's okay to pick up the phone, it's okay to text someone, or we're going back to using our phone again, but let's just say hypothetically, let's say we've overcome our phone addiction and we're using it properly. Do you think hunger gets a bad rap? Is it like, oh, that fella's hungry? Is it an
I think,
Irish?
yeah, it does, but I think you know the intention behind the hunger though.
Yeah.
So if the hunger for me is from the perspective of, okay, so let's just take two different examples. So I'll take a personal example whereby I want to experience something.
Mm.
So whether it be a particular type of aviation flight or whatever it be, I want to experience this. So I'm hungry to experience that. So that's the intention behind it. If it's a business scenario whereby I know I can make a difference for that client and I can see the difference for them, I can literally, I can see it for them. So I'm coming from the space of I want them to help. I want to help them achieve what I know they can potentially achieve. If the intention on the flip side was take the stereotypical salesperson, because this is really where it comes from, whereby they want to hit a target
Mm.
and they got a commission target that they want to hit and so on, and they're really that's their intention, that's their focus, and they're hungry from the perspective of they want to get that client in the door and they want to close the sale because if they close the sale at the end of the month, that's going to that for me it's not the right intention in the first place. So it all depends on the intention behind the actual hunger.
Which is an interesting one because like we all know in our lives someone who is inherently proactive and they can't sit still. But when you
Mm.
see their work rate and what they get done in a short space of time, it can be phenomenal. So you'll meet people and we had the dinner that we were at last week, there was someone at that, and that's someone who it's almost as if they've got a giant egg timer above their head. And
Mm.
anything they do, they were at your table, anything they do, you can see that they're just constantly churning. They're getting things done. They're moving along. They're taking action, but they have a natural affinity to take action. And I think that also feeds into they're inherently mindful of time, as in like life and all that kind of stuff. So do you think that
Yeah,
plays a role?
yeah, I'd agree and I disagree on that one because there's the underlying drive within that though. So there's people that will want to achieve an awful lot because, yeah, okay, time might be the essence and so on. Or there's something within them, or they've experienced something that really drives them from that side. But then there also can be that they're chasing something. And for me, as soon as you mention chasing, whatever you're chasing is going away. So that individual can be chasing something, meaning the financial target, the growth, the reward, whatever that might be, and so on. But it's at the sacrifice of something else.
So now you're bringing in another layer just to make
Hmm.
us all more confused. First and foremost, we thought we kicked our phone addiction. We're picking up the phone because we're hungry. And then there's different layers of hunger. But what's interesting when you say that though is the motivation
Hmm.
is the because then you're leading into previous conversations we've had in the second season, which is like why we're doing things, what's the driver, what has you doing this particular action for whatever reason. So it's almost that your body, it's kind of like your body keeping score. So if you're doing it because you need to keep food on the table, it's like, what are you going to do? What does that hunger mean? If you're doing it because you have to deliver this wonderful thing to the world in your internal metric, whatever it is, that's another thing. But it's very interesting that you say that there's an underlying driver that could be the inverse of that, which is, yeah, that person's hungry, but the internal mechanism for them is actually the thing that's the anti-hungry, which is
Yeah.
not a good place to be coming from either. So you have to be quite self-aware when you look at what it is
Yeah.
you're doing and why.
Yeah. So there is a good question that people will be familiar with Simon Sinek,
Mm.
Start with Why, and so on, and you'll know my views on that particular book and that
You love
particular
them, yeah, I
teaching.
know.
Yeah. But there's always both sides. So where people misinterpret, it was miscommunicated, let's put it that way,
Yeah.
is
Mm.
what I would say. So it's wrong in a lot of respects, but it's also good in other respects. So let's just put that aside. We'll explore that some other day. But if you really ask yourself the question, why do you do what you do? So why are you building a business? And you go along the premise of ask yourself 5 whys, at least 5 whys. So why are you building a business? Why are you working with clients? Why are you doing X, Y, and Z? It depends on the driving force within that, because honestly, if you really drill sufficiently, you'll find that it will come down to an internal need as opposed to being an altruistic need. And the altruistic need is, yeah, but I want to help clients. Yeah, that's the altruistic need. But there's an internal void that is being matched because of that. So when you find the internal void, which an awful lot of people don't go to seek down, that's what I do, but that's the piece that they're missing. And when you find that void, now you know why you're doing what you're doing, what you're really doing, because everybody's trying to fill a void. They don't do something altruistically just for the sake of doing something altruistically. They're trying to fill a void. Every single human being, I'll keep repeating this phrase, but most people don't really fully understand it, but they've got to put it on repeat. Every single human being will only do something when they perceive that there's more benefits to them than there are drawbacks. Every single human being. So in summary, you'll only do something when you're benefiting from it. Now, I'd have debates with people in the sense of, no, I'm doing it because I want to help the individual. No, you're doing it because you're getting something in return. You're doing it because there's a benefit for you. Guarantee it every single time. If you drill sufficiently enough first, you'll see it. So the driving force behind somebody, which is why you're hungry, you can create the hunger. That's one thing what you can do. But the other aspect is that what's the void that you're trying to fill? Go back to our individual. As an example, there's a void being tried to be filled there. So you got to find a void. Now, but then once you know what the void is, now you can make a choice as regards, do you continue to pursue and fill that void, or do you take an alternative route? It's a choice.
So I'm not going to add to that. All I'm going to say is if my microphone wasn't attached, it would have been a mic drop moment. So if I was holding it, I would have dropped it, even though it wasn't me who said it. And I think the most profound way to leave this episode is to get people to ask themselves why 5 times. I actually loved it. Sounds funny, it sounds so simple, but ask yourself why you're doing something 5 times and just see what comes up, because there's going to be the justification, the clarification, all these different things. But you know what? Just leave it at that. I think just
But
ask
go back
yourself why.
to, just to explain that a little bit more for people, go back to the example of what I gave, which is the Russian dolls. The first question is, okay, so why do you do what you do? And then you'll open that Russian doll, you'll find out the next one. Keep drilling down into, yeah, but why do you do that for? Why do you do that? So it's about opening each one of those Russian dolls as opposed to just asking yourself 5 times, just to make sure that people do it right. That's all.
I like that. I'm going to leave it there, Paul. Thank you very much for that.
Cool.
See you next time.
And that's it for another episode of Beyond Just Business. If it gave you something to think about, or it helped you see things a little differently, we're delighted. But make sure you're following so you don't miss out on the next episode. Stay curious, keep questioning, and we will see you next time.